Welcome to the first hour of the Young Turks, everybody. John Idarola, Anna Kasparian, as we had yesterday. But we also have Maz Jobrani joining us after a long gap, hasn't been on the show in a while. A couple of things have changed in the politics of this country since then. I feel like you're going to have a lot to talk about now.
Since last year, a couple things have changed.
They have, yeah. So in terms of the politics, we're going to try to cover as much of that as we can. But you've also been busy. We're going to give people details on some of your live shows that are going to be happening. I know that you're getting ready to prep to shoot a Netflix special.
Yes.
This is like the year of the Netflix comedy specials.
Well, I think first of all, Netflix is buying a lot of comedy specials, but also as comedians.
Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K.
Chappelle, Louis C.K., Chris Rock. So Netflix is really starting to stockpile comedy specials.
Yeah.
I think the world needs comedy, but also as comedians, it's amazing. It's like you can't stop writing. Because I was saying, like I'm shooting my special next week in D.C. and I actually stopped trying to write new stuff about Trump because it just keeps coming. So he's been really good for comedy, but really bad for the world.
Really bad for the world. Yeah. So we'll laugh as the Titanic sinks.
As the Titanic sinks, someone's got to entertain.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only entertain, I think that right now so many people are feeling discouraged, and I think this is a shining moment for a lot of comedians because being able to laugh at all the depressing stuff that's going on is very much needed. So
absolutely. It's been interesting.
It has, and you're also starring on Superior Donuts on CBS.
Yeah, it's a sitcom on CBS. It's based off of a play written by Tracy Letts, and it stars Judd Hirsch and this young African-American comedian named Jermaine Fowler. They're the two main guys. It's kind of like Cheers in a donut shop. And we've got Katie Seagal in there, David Koechner.
Yeah, I saw that. I love Katie Seagal.
Yeah, Anna Baryshnikov. It's a great cast. And Jimmy Burrows is directing.
And you play a character that's trying to buy the location, but you also go to the location to eat and drink there.
Yes, I play an Iraqi immigrant who owns properties in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to buy the donut shop as well.
Okay.
Just like what immigrants do, we buy properties.
Just buy it out from under us.
That's exactly what my dad did.
Right?
Yeah.
And in my
it's based
opinion,
on his life.
Listen, in my mind as an Iranian American, I'm excited because I think it's a step in the right direction because I'm not playing a terrorist. I'm not harming anybody. I'm just trying to buy properties.
Just trying to snatch those properties up.
American dream.
From these hardworking white Americans. Why you gotta do that?
I'm gonna give them a good deal. I'll give them a good deal.
Makes great deals. I hear there's an art to deals. Maybe we can find a book for you.
Yes.
So we're gonna have a great first hour, great second hour. You're gonna be joined by Hassan and Grace in the second hour. Over the course of this first hour, we're gonna touch on, we've been meaning to get to this for days now, the three different factions in the White House, their struggle for power. We're gonna cover that. We're gonna cover the intense protests that have been going on for over a week in Venezuela now. We're also going to talk about the consequences of Donald Trump on popularity of Republican politicians around the country. Some really interesting polls have been coming out over the past couple of days. So we're gonna get to all that, but before, we do actually have a little bit of good news, so I wanna present that to you now. New Mexico just became the first state in the country to require all local and state police officers to have at all times antidote kits for opioid and heroin overdoses, which seems like a great move, probably an expensive one, but considering the amount of deaths that are happening due to those epidemics, having police actually have it on the scene, not having to make an extra call in or call 911 or anything like that, seems like a great move, and I would like to see that spread.
Yeah, I think that it's common sense, and there has been some pushback from lawmakers who feel as though it's a way of encouraging drug use, which I completely disagree with. I think that if there's a way to help save lives, and then hopefully we also move toward rehabilitating people rather than criminalizing people for drug use, we could really help, people's lives progress instead of treating them as if they're throwaways in society.
And I think I'm surprised that this is just happening. This is one of those.
That is the first.
I thought cops carried that. That's one of those things that's interesting.
They do in a lot of areas. It's the first state requiring it across the entirety of the state.
I would think that everybody would require that regardless. It's kind of like when I was like when you expect certain things. Like I was at a restaurant and my friend was choking, and I didn't know he was choking until someone looked at me and goes, "Dude, you think he needs the Heimlich?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Are there any doctors here?" And there was no doctors there.
Right.
And I was like, when you want a doctor, they're not there. And the same thing with a cop. You would think that the cop would have, like if someone were overdosing and a cop were there, I'd be like, get your Narcan thing. And then you're saying some states, they'd be like, I don't have one because.
I mean, we can call in for one maybe. But yeah, so this is a great development. Looking abroad, the country of Turkey is actually on the cusp in less than a week now of considering a referendum that's going to make huge sweeping changes to their system of government. They're actually going to switch from a parliamentary form of government to a presidential form of government if the referendum passes. It has a million other consequences, but one that I think we can't overlook is that if this were to be put into effect, then Erdogan would be able to remain as head of state until 2029. So I'm sure that that's just a happy coincidence that they're considering right now.
Only good things come out of that. I mean, Gaddafi did it. Hosni Mubarak did it.
Keep pushing it back. Just push it back.
Trump wants to do it.
We'll see.
We don't know.
I will venture to say that it will pass.
It's possible.
I mean, that's speculation, obviously, but Erdogan is very clear. At least his actions in the past have made it very clear that he is, very much on the right wing of things and will not let go of power easily. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and sort of ironically, well, perhaps not ironically, the attempted coup last year provides the explanation as to why he needs to make these changes. It makes it a little bit easier to hold on to power. Turning back to the US, calculations of Donald Trump's travel expenses so far now say that he will actually pass the 8 years of Obama's expenses for travel by Christmas of this year.
Oh my gosh.
In just 1 year. And he basically is just going back and forth between Mar-a-Lago and DC. So I would say, let's save a ton of money, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars. Just stay in Mar-a-Lago, if that's where you really want to be.
That is where
I would
he really
say
wants to be.
abdicate, then stay there. But fine, just stay there as president.
Or can't we just make him fly Spirit Airlines or something?
Can you imagine?
Right?
Can you imagine? Oh my
Yeah, but
God.
like the nuclear football, you got to pay extra to bring that on the plane.
Right?
Man. Come on, they charge you for everything.
Trying to save money here. Southwest.
That's funny. And then finally, oh wow, I just realized this is an incredibly serious development, but the suspect in the Stockholm terror attack, it's a 39-year-old Uzbek national, had been taken after the attack on Friday, has pled guilty according to his lawyers. In that attack, he killed 4 people, wounded 15 others. There was no doubt, I believe, that this was the guy, but he has actually pled guilty, and so the legal process can continue from there. So yeah, that was a bad transition between those two stories. But
Yeah,
that's
we
what
were,
happens
we
in
were
the
laughing
news.
there for a minute, but
Yeah,
then
sorry.
yeah.
Well, let's turn to something maybe we can generate some laughs in this first story. Since this weekend, the White House has wanted you desperately to be convinced that the talks of power struggles in the White House actually aren't happening, that everything is hunky-dory, everybody's working together, and that they're not just working together, but they're capping off an incredibly successful, productive first 100 days in office. So that's what they want you to believe. But brewing in the background, the power struggles apparently have not gone away. So I want to take you back about a week to when Steve Bannon was taken off of one of the subcommittees of the National Security Council. This was considered a big move. It brought a little bit more rationality back to the National Security Council. You had people with actual experience in intelligence and national security making some of those decisions. Now, we don't know for sure who it is that got him taken off, but a lot of people have pointed the finger at Jared Kushner. So you have the Steve Bannon coming from Breitbart, representing sort of the nativist section of the power base in the White House, and then you have Jared Kushner, a guy who is being put in charge of project after project after project, even though he's a 36-year-old guy who's only worked in real estate. But he does seem to be a little bit more rational, perhaps a stabilizing force on Donald Trump. Now, previously, Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon had spoken favorably of each other. It seemed like for some reason they'd been able to work together. But now that Steve Bannon's being pushed out of the NSC, his independent organization that had been generating suggestions for policy was apparently disbanded very quietly. It might be that Jared Kushner's star is rising in Donald Trump's eyes, and that is bad for Steve Bannon and for a lot of Trump supporters who don't like Jared Kushner. They want the white supremacist part of the White House to reign supreme. And so back after he was taken off the NSC, you then saw suspiciously Breitbart, which Steve Bannon used to head and of course very influential at, published 4 articles about Jared Kushner that were all negative, all on the same day. Highlighting his meetings with the Russian ambassador, which we know is a hot button topic right now. Questioning the ethics of his business dealings, including his dealings with Chinese businesses. criticizing his thin resume in diplomacy and speculating about whether he is the source that's leaking negative stories about Bannon as they leak information about Jared Kushner. And I just want to show you one picture of one of these articles. They put out like a BuzzFeed style list of 5 delicate problems that Jared Kushner is going to, and then of course the picture of him laughing as he flies around in a helicopter. So now that has stopped, and we've heard that Donald Trump said you guys have to get along, you have to talk it out. Then word came out that Breitbart writers had been told to stop writing the negative stories about Jared Kushner. But we also know, and I'm gonna get to the video a little bit later on, that Steve Bannon was not just like peeved about being taken off the NSC, he's actually like in a rage. And so what do you guys think? Do you think that they've worked it out, that they're going to somehow share power? Is that in the nature of someone like Steve Bannon?
Steve Bannon does come from that white nationalist school of thought. And I just want to really emphasize that, because that Breitbart story accusing Kushner of having a thin resume on diplomacy is so incredibly ironic, especially if it was written with the intent to defend Bannon and to basically, insult Kushner. Bannon is a nightmare. And so if Kushner is the force within the administration that keeps the white nationalist school of thought in check, then I'm happy about it. I don't believe for a second that the infighting has stopped. I think that it will continue because ideologically there are some differences there, and there's significant differences. And look, Kushner is an Orthodox Jew. And when you have white nationalist forces within the administration and people backing that ideology, you're gonna have the infighting. And I'm glad that it exists, because someone like Bannon, I think, is incredibly dangerous. And I hope that Kushner does have a little bit more power than he does within the administration.
I just think we're screwed. I mean, any way you look at it. I mean, the fact that these guys are arguing, it's like 2 months in, they're arguing, they haven't gotten anything right. Very little right. Then he launches these missiles, and then some people say it was right. I still don't agree with that either. So there's a big mess going on, and 2 of his main guys are arguing. That does not induce confidence. There's a lack of experience here. No one is qualified to be in these positions until the General McMaster, was it McMaster? Those guys come in, and then they go, okay, you know what? Let's get this. He's probably looking over. He's like, what's Steve Bannon doing here? And
probably. I mean, I wouldn't blame anyone, with experience feeling that way.
Yeah, and Trump is so triggered. Like he seems to just change alliances. He's like, oh, you're right, Bannon, get out of here. And Bannon's like, what? I don't feel like there's a good guy in power, and the advisors either. Actually, I found it ironic that it was kind of funny that he keeps saying Kushner all these like dangerous areas. He's like, maybe he doesn't like his son-in-law. He's like, you go to Iraq, I'm going to Mar-a-Lago. You know what I'm saying? But honestly, the other problem with this, which is frustrating as hell, is when you watch someone from the White House or one of Trump's surrogates saying, no, there's no big deal. This has been the best. Trump himself, been a successful 100 days. And you're like, what reality are they watching?
Well, I think that it's in their best interest to pretend as if everything is going smoothly, right? I don't think that they're even necessarily in denial. I think that they just want to straight out lie to the American people, and hopefully some will really buy into this narrative that the media is lying to them and that everything's actually going very smoothly. But I think Americans are starting to wake up, which is a good sign. But I agree with you. I'm not trying to say like, oh, we have Kushner there and that's like the good force is fighting the bad force. No, we have one bad guy and then one guy who's worse, right? And when we're talking about the Kushner-Bannon issue, there are a lot of issues with Kushner, don't get me wrong, but at least when it comes to this white nationalist ideology, Kushner could be, and I hope is, a mitigating force.
Yeah, and we actually saw, I mean, we reported yesterday on the response to Trump launching the attacks into Syria. So how do his big supporters make ends meet in their head on that? Well, they say that it's not Donald Trump. He doesn't actually want to do that. It's the Jews in the White House that are making him do that. And so they attack Kushner, they attack Ivanka Trump. It's no coincidence that those guys also like Steve Bannon. And I agree that either way, regardless of which has Trump's ear, we are screwed. But I think we're screwed in very different ways.
Right.
I think that with Steve Bannon, we get Muslim bans and we get a much more disgusting foreign policy. I think that's true. We also get some incompetence because he doesn't know government any more than Jared Kushner does. With Jared Kushner, I don't think that we have that sort of ideological extremism in terms of social policy, hatred of Mexicans or gays or anything like that. But I do think we'll get far more corruption. I think that Jared Kushner is in there to get, like Breitbart says, to get sweetheart business deals for his own family, which is tied in with real estate. And I think that him combined with Donald Trump, I think that they are gonna loot the federal government for their own purposes. And it's up to you to decide if that's better or worse than Muslim bans and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and listen, people say, oh, Hillary was crooked, this was crooked, like the politicians are crooked. It's human nature. These guys are gonna get in there. They're all powerful people. Trump's a businessman. They're all gonna be there doing a lot of stuff that's crooked, taking advantage of their opportunities for their own business purposes, or trying to implement their own ideologies. And the thing is, though, it just, again, it goes to this thing where you hear people in the election, people were saying, I want an outsider. I want an outsider. He was gonna clean the swamp. I want an outsider. It's the only job in the world where people say they want an outsider. You don't hear people go, I want a surgeon who's an outsider, someone who's never done this before, who will surround himself with other people who've never done this before.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's really frustrating watching these guys, thinking to myself, I feel like I know more about foreign policy than these guys do.
Absolutely.
You send a 35-year-old real estate developer to Iraq to do what? What is he going to do?
To manage the peace process in Israel.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it blows my mind. I'm not defending Steve Bannon at all. Steve Bannon is scary. Like, as an Iranian American, that guy is super scary. So yeah, we're screwed.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and it is really scary. But I think what people were tired of during the election was like this fakeness and this inauthenticity that you see with a lot of standard politicians. They wanted someone that they could actually identify with, who would at least pretend like they understood the economic issues that they're experiencing. And unfortunately, a lot of people did get conned by someone like Trump, because look, he's the #1 swamp monster. He's the type of person who's exploited a corrupt political system for his own personal gain for a very long time. He has taken advantage of that system, so there was no reason to believe that he wouldn't get elected and fill that swamp up with monsters just like him.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, people did get conned. He's still there, and when people wanted an anti-establishment politician, they unfortunately voted for the wrong one. There was one anti-establishment politician, and unfortunately, he didn't even get an opportunity to run as the front runner for the Democrats.
Yeah, listen, I'm someone who's very, I'm not a hawk at all. I'm much more peaceful, and I want diplomacy. But when I see he's bringing some of these generals in, I actually feel a little bit of comfort. I'm like, okay, well, these guys got some experience. Now they're probably going to push for war with somebody, but at least they kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them, the ones who are looking to jobs as lobbyists for the defense contractors, they might well push for war, but at least the soldiers know the cost of war. They know, they've seen dead soldiers. I mean, they filled the White House with these guys who, it's just been like Ayn Randian power fantasies their whole life. They don't actually know what the real world is like. I want to turn back to Steve Bannon though, because there's a reason I don't think that this is done, and that I think Jared Kushner should watch his back. So first, I want to show this video of Joe Scarborough, who apparently has inside sources about just how angry Steve Bannon was.
Steve Bannon is an island unto himself in the White House. Any allies he may have had have scattered, and all have told the president they are with the president and they are with his family. I just think it's a matter of time. Does he decide to be Kellyanne Conway and stay in the White House with no authority and hang on? Or does he leave the White House? Well, then I talked to 3 of the top president's people yesterday. They do not understand what happened to Steve Bannon, why he decided to start attacking the president's family. And the word I heard from all 3 was, he just snapped. And that's causing concern from the president down, that somebody would be this unbalanced, that somebody would be this undisciplined, that they would just snap and start attacking the president's family.
So apparently Steve Bannon snapped. And then you began seeing the Breitbart articles attacking Jared Kushner. Now, something else happened in that period at the end of last week that nobody's talking about any of this anymore, because 59 cruise missiles were launched in an airfield in Syria. But I noticed that amongst the different articles that were apparently probably being inspired by Steve Bannon to attack Jared Kushner over, there was also all of a sudden, months after Jared Kushner had to finish his security clearance application process, all that, All of a sudden, right after Bannon is taken off the NSC, a story about Jared Kushner's security clearance hits the news. So when Kushner sought top secret security clearance, he was required to disclose all encounters with foreign government officials over the last 7 years. Kushner did not mention dozens of contacts with foreign leaders or officials in recent months, including a December meeting with the Russian ambassador and one with the head of a Russian state-owned bank. So that information could have come out months ago, but it came out right during their feud. Now, that, not mentioning that you've met dozens of times with Russian officials, you can make of that whatever you want. But we know that we're in a climate right now where Mike Flynn just had to step down because of lying over his meetings with Russian officials. So that's not just here's 5 things that he's not qualified to run. That's a knife in the back, an attempt to get Jared Kushner to have to step down. It didn't work, partially because the news immediately turned to Syria. This story has now been forgotten, nobody cares about it anymore. But I believe that Steve Bannon might have been involved in that story being leaked, and that is not just like a punch in the gut. That's a knife to the throat. He was trying to take Jared Kushner out of government there.
Wow.
It didn't work, but the next one could.
Just listening to you explain that right now reminded me of The Godfather. It feels like there's a lot going on. Like Jared Kushner's kind of the Michael Corleone, you know what I'm saying? And you got and then the Turks, Solazzo is trying to move in and sell drugs. And that's Bannon. You know what I'm saying? And Barcini's involved somehow. This is very, like, you should watch The Godfather again. It will teach you how this White House is being run.
Yeah, that may be true, but I hope that in 4 years we don't get a sequel.
I hope, I definitely, we hope that it stops at, But the other thing is, it's interesting because I just watched Scarborough talk. It's interesting, he's right. Like Flynn is gone, Kellyanne has kind of been demoted, Bannon might be gone. It feels
Sessions
like
had to step down for those same sorts of things.
Yeah, and
lies.
Nunez. It feels like Trump's White House is more like his TV show The Apprentice. Like he just keeps firing people.
People get fired, demoted all over
and at the very
place.
end, it'll just be one guy. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he thinks he's on the show.
It's still going on. Maybe we're all on the show. Anyway, we do have to take our first break though. When we come back, we've got some electoral consequences coming up for Republicans for how incredibly unpopular they've become, and then the protests that have taken over Venezuela over the last week. We'll have all that and more when we come back from this break.
All right, post-game here in Studio B. It's a green screen magic of internet television.
A lot of condom breaking stories.
Any conversation that starts with marriage is an interesting thing deserves a little bit of.
When the kid cries, perhaps that's that is an opportunity to do some. It's an opportunity to do some parenting.
Yeah, parenting is you cry, you're gone.
Oh my God.
I love that video.
Yeah, Ben, I got a great achoo. You're like, my mouth was open. She sneezed in my eye.
I used to have Donut Tower next to my desk.
Yeah, I'll dress up like a girl.
I sound confident now, Anna. When we're off the air, I'm gonna be like, how is this gonna work?
When you get literally asked why 21 straight times.
Yeah.
And like at some point you're like, you're fucking with me now, right?
So I dumped the kids off at her mom's and I drove down to La Jolla for a day.
Get out, kids.
They're like, but Daddy, no.
Why? What do you mean why? You asked me to look at you. You did it. You brought it up. You know you're doing it. What do you mean why? I don't know why. I was reading. She's lovely. Here's what's different. Like it is a different feeling. Everybody says this, but it's 5:11 when we're shooting this. I can't wait to go home. Like that. I can't wait to see her. What
you guys do is allow us to be open and honest, and we don't have to worry about censorship, and we don't have to worry about sponsors telling us what we can and can't say. We're accountable by our audience and our audience only, and I absolutely love that. That's the best part about being a member. We love you guys.
They failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
But it was genuine. He was mad.
Jake Uger, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
I just remember thinking, what is this guy's name?
Cenk the Turk Yuga.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Johnny Rolla, Anna Kasparian, our guest, Maz Jobrani, going through the news, breaking it down. We got some tweets from you. People have been tweeting at hashtag TYT Live. D. Moore, who actually we read a tweet by him yesterday, says this administration is more of a mess than Godfather 3. I've actually seen Godfather 3.
They keep pulling me back in.
Exactly.
That was the
You're
line.
Italian, of course you've seen it.
I lived it, okay? Billy Runaway says, quote, Bannon snapped as undisciplined. That just won't fly in Trump's rock-steady White House. And I'm a Derpy Panda says, Confucius says, how does one snap when they were not together to begin with? Think about that during the rest of the first hour.
Yes.
Before we get back into it though, I did want to let you know, we alluded to a couple of live shows that Maz is going to be doing soon. So if we could put up this this graphic. Maz, April 15th, that's the Kennedy Center. That's going to be the show where you're filming the Netflix special.
Absolutely,
right?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, so I'm excited about that.
I love that picture, by the way.
Yeah.
And then coming back to LA the following week, the Sub-N Theater, April 22nd, and tickets are still available for both?
Both, yeah, they're both getting close to being sold out, but I'm doing both of those and I'm doing other cities as well. So if people just go to mazjobrani.com, they'll see if I'm coming to their cities.
Okay. And also, just for you members, we are gonna have a post-game live after the show. If you're not a member now, you can become one, watch the post-game live. There will not be a new episode of TYT Old School, unfortunately. It will be back next week. Cenk just isn't here this week. But you can still go to tytnetwork.com, go to member content, and we've got dozens of episodes of Old School that you can catch up on until Cenk gets back into LA. And with that, why don't we jump back into the news? Actually being in power, being in charge of things isn't really working out so well for the Republican popularity across the country for high-profile politicians, and that very well could have electoral consequences for the GOP. Now, we don't know yet how widespread it'll be. We need a big election for that, but we could have a preview as early as tonight. So in Kansas, they're having a special election. It's the 4th congressional district, and it pits James Thompson, the Democrat, against Ron Estes, the Republican. Now, this is a district that Trump won by 30 points. And so why are we even talking about this? Come on, that's about as big of a lead as you can have. Well, not too long ago, an internal Republican poll had Estes up by just 1 point. That is an amazing movement in not a long time, but it has been enough to get the Republicans to respond because they don't want to lose this seat so early after Trump's inauguration. People watch these and they think that it could be a bellwether for further elections down the line. A Republican strategist in Kansas says it shouldn't be this close. Estez's closest race should have been to get through the nominating convention, and then you're skating, but right now he's not. And it's not just speculation. The National Republican Congressional Committee spent nearly $100,000 on TV and digital ads where they hit Thompson as a fan of late-term abortion, which his campaign says is just a vicious lie. They're just saying that. But these ads have led to a lot of conservatives donating to Estez's campaign. And in fact, it even goes up as high as the White House, with Donald Trump getting off his ass and doing a little bit of work to record this phone call ad for tonight's special election.
Hello, this is President Donald Trump, and I have something big to tell you. This Tuesday, April 11th, there is a very important special election for Congress in Kansas. On Tuesday, Republican Ron Estes needs your vote and needs it badly. Ron is a conservative leader who's going to work with me to make America great again. We're going to do things really great for our country. Our country needs help. Ron is going to be helping us big league. But I need Republicans like Ron Estes to help me get the job done. This is an important election. There's really few very much more important, and I need your vote for Ron Estes on Tuesday. So, April 11th, Tuesday, please join me in supporting Republican Ron Estes for Congress. He's going to help me do a really, really good job for our country. Thank you very much.
That was great. That was great.
Yep.
That was the worst possible thing you can do if you're noticing that even Republicans are turning on you because of how crazy Trump and his administration is. And then you have him record an ad for you. Awesome. Keep spending money on that kind of stuff.
And you let him say big league.
It's like big league.
It's like he hit all of the things that he gets criticized
We're gonna
for
do great
in
things.
one ad.
You're gonna be so proud.
Tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, but look, he's appealing to committed conservatives. That's why he referenced all of those specific policies and Estez's positions on them. Oh no, wait, he just said he'd do a good job over and over and over again. So look, he's trying to help out big league. Maybe we can help out as well. If you're watching this live, I believe the polls should still be open in that special election. So I never like to tell people to stop watching the show, but perhaps pause the stream, go and vote if you can. Either way, and then come back. But yeah, that's a comical ad. Trump clearly doesn't care.
He's
Imagine
so
how hard
bad at
it
reading
is
that script
to
too.
get him to work. He just doesn't want to work. And so look, that's an incredibly important election. Now, it might not go for the Democrats. I mean, they were down by 30 points. So
it's Kansas.
It's Kansas too, and there's redistricting and all of that is true. There's other elections coming up. Georgia has another election that people are watching really closely, and the national Democratic fundraising apparatuses are putting actually more money into that one than this, which might be have been a bad decision. It looks like this is an opportunity. But this is not just a Kansas thing. It's not just a Georgia thing. This could have national implications because there's been some polls coming out that are showing how deeply unpopular some of these high-profile Republicans are. First of all, though, they looked at the constituents of senators. Who likes their senator, who doesn't like their senator? You want to guess who the most popular senator in the country is amongst their constituents?
Well,
Could it be the pro behind us?
Could it be? Why was he on that the whole time? Weird. Yes, 75% of Sanders' constituents approved of his performance in office compared to 21% who disapproved, which is, by the way, actually worse numbers than he had 6 months ago, but still the best in the entire country. Now you might think, well, look, 75% like him, but people tend to like their senator. Come on, who could you actually dislike? Well, we found someone they dislike. Only 44% of Kentuckians approve of Mitch McConnell's performance, the least liked senator in the entire country, compared to 47% who disapprove. He's the only one out of 100 to receive net disapproval, and yet he's perhaps the most powerful senator in the country. What a weird, twisted political system we have.
Right.
That you don't need to be liked to have huge power in our government.
That's right.
Aren't they don't have term limits, do they? The senators?
For the senators, no.
Yeah, so they can
just keep going.
He just stayed. McConnell, I've never liked. He was the one who said that our job is to stop Obama from passing it, right?
That's right.
I've never liked that guy. And Bernie, I mean, first of all, when you hear McConnell talk, I feel like if they were at a party, like Bernie feels like they're both older white guys.
Right.
What's the difference? Bernie feels like the kind of guy who might have weed or but wouldn't mind if you had weed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And McConnell feels like the kind of guy who's like sitting there, like in a polo with like a little sweater around and just thinking racist thoughts.
He'd be the narc. Like if he saw you smoking a doobie, he'd like go tell the cops.
He would tell the cops.
He's that kind of guy.
He would he'd be hesitant when he sees the brownish color skin tone. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if they can even see. He's actually peeking on the corner of that graphic over there. You can't even see him.
You guys can't see him.
And look, it's really unfortunate because he's unpopular, but he does keep getting reelected, and there are no term limits. And unfortunately, some species of sea turtle can live to 200 or 300 years old.
know,
and so he might be around for a really long time.
That's the reason why it's so incredibly important for people to get involved in midterm elections and actually pay attention to what's happening on a very local level, right? It's not just about who's running for president. You know, midterm elections are incredibly important, and I'm really curious to see how it all plays out, in the upcoming midterm election.
It's gonna be rough. I've looked ahead. It's gonna be rough, even if they're unpopular. I mean, there can be big moves, but it's not as favorable a year as this last one.
But it's also interesting that they do that thing that they did to the race in Kansas. They say, oh, they just throw out something where they go, oh, this guy supports late-term abortions.
Yeah.
And that's Trump did that in the debate with Hillary. He's like, she would just pull a baby out at the 9th month, and she's like, no, I wouldn't. But then his supporters are like, yes, he would.
I can see her. She busts into the operating room, just drags it out of there.
But that's what's crazy. You can say anything, and it could be totally aligned to go vote for you.
But that doesn't mean that people can't learn. They can eventually develop the appropriate hatred and disrespect for politicians. So we're also going to tell you the least popular governor. Any guesses? Least popular governor?
Well, he's
no idea. No idea.
Well, 71% of New Jersey disapproves of Chris Christie, while just 25% approve. Oh,
that is pretty
those numbers are rough. Christie actually edged out Kansas Governor Sam Brownback, who I would have guessed, who had 66% disapproval to 27% approval.
Nobody likes anyone in Kansas.
Not so much, not so much. It's rough times because of Sam Brownback, but Christie, after all the deference he gave to Donald Trump and the sucking up he did, it has not done him any favors.
No, I think that it worked against him. He made a fool out of himself. You know, when he essentially flip-flopped and decided to support Trump, you know, that incredibly embarrassing video of him creepily, nodding behind Trump that we made fun of so much during the election. Yeah. So none of this surprises me. Again, I think that the midterm elections are important. Hopefully people are paying attention and they actually get involved and cast their vote for the person that really looks out for their best interests.
And hopefully they're watching these special elections too and not just waiting for this.
Yeah, people want, especially like in Jersey, they're tough guys, a lot of tough guys, and then your governor goes, remember the meatloaf situation where Trump ordered for Christie? He's like, you're gonna have the meatloaf. He's like, all right,
no more Oreos.
So
right there, I would have been like, oh, he's got no balls.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Yeah. Okay, let's switch it up. We're to cast our eyes southward. We're almost a week into fiercely renewed protests against the government of Venezuela. There have been thousands that have organized in the capital city, but it goes beyond the capital city. It's across the country. I mean, the protests have never really gone away. For well over a year, they've been going on, but they've come back in a big way, and there's some great reasons for that. Unfortunately, police tactics against the protesters started off brutal and became worse as time went on. And we're gonna give you the details. You should understand, we're gonna be showing you pictures throughout. Some of the photos are inspiring, the big crowds, but then the sheer amount of tear gas that they're sending into these crowds, the military tactics on display there, fires in the background.
It's amazing.
Some of these photos were made. I mean, thank God for photojournalists that are willing to, as with the protesters, put themselves in dangerous situations. You see grenade launchers being shot off, shotguns firing beanbags at protesters. Now we've got some quotes from some of the opposition leaders in Venezuela who are fighting this ongoing political battle against Nicolas Maduro. Freddy Guevara, the opposition majority Congress deputy speaker, said, "This is a battle of resistance. We will see who gets tired first, us of fighting or them of repressing." And that is a rough battle to wage because I don't know at this point. And also the opposition lawmaker for one of the opposition parties said, "We went into the streets to protest measures taken by the government against our own constitution and our own democracy. But this time repression was worse than before." And as we showed you, riot police firing tear gas. There was actually a tear gas canister, a video shown in an active tear gas canister in a hospital. Patients who are about to undergo surgery having to be taken out. One infant had to be treated for asphyxiation. So these non-lethal tactics can have lethal consequences, and in fact they already have. One protester was killed on Thursday of last week. Dozens have been wounded. I've read over 100 wounded. Nearly 200 people have already been arrested, many of them students. But let's talk briefly about why we've come to this point. So we've been talking about Venezuela for a long time here. Food shortages. One report said that the average Venezuelan had lost 18 pounds as a result of the lack of food, because there's heavy price controls. The food isn't being produced. There's electricity shortages. But then there's also the actions taken by those at the top. So Maduro and also the Supreme Court. So in a couple of decisions, they basically took away all the power from the popularly elected legislature. There was a huge outcry over that, and they sort of stepped back, but they did it. And that is scary for a country that's supposed to be a democracy, to see them step this far in the direction of an authoritarian or dictatorial form of government. You also have crackdowns on opposition leaders. So Leopoldo Lopez has been in jail for more than 3 years already. It's one of the most popular opposition politicians there, still in jail. And recently, Enrique Capriles was barred from running for office for 15 years. That's the governor of one of the most populous, I believe the most populous region in Venezuela. So at the same time that the legislature is being cracked down on, you now have those who could, Enrique came within, I believe, a couple of points of ousting Maduro in the last national election.
Yep.
So now they're being barred from running. At the same time, the people are suffering. Money's being pumped into the military. He's armed effectively his own militias outside of the military, a security apparatus that he's armed himself. It's a scary situation.
It is. And so at first, and this is prior to the more dictatorial moves under Maduro, I actually felt a little bit of sympathy for Maduro, because he was elected into office after Hugo Chavez. And keep in mind that Chavez is the person who kind of crafted the beginning of an economic situation that was destined for failure. Now, there were a lot of different factors into why Venezuela's economic situation became so dire. It kind of started off with an over-reliance on oil, and also an over-reliance on imports, as opposed to industry exporting goods to other countries. And so you have this one industry that you rely on for all the money, and then oil prices go down, and then what happens? And then also keep in mind that even though I think that social programs to help the poor are incredibly important, I favor them tremendously, okay? I do want to add that there is a way of going too far. So you have countries like Saudi Arabia, for instance, that also rely heavily on oil, but they also save money in case oil prices go down. Venezuela, unfortunately, did not do that.
Yeah.
And so since they were spending so much money on social programs and helping the poor and not really saving enough for when oil prices go down, then all of a sudden the economic situation just kind of explodes. So it kind of started off like that, and I felt a little bit of sympathy for Maduro simply because he was the one who inherited, this economic system that again was destined to fail. But then he decided to dig himself into a deeper hole, and then he refused to let go of power, and that's what we're seeing here.
To make necessary reforms as well that could have avoided some of this.
Exactly, he did not make the necessary reforms, kept digging that hole deeper and deeper. People are hungry, people are desperate, you see this uprising, and then he continues to dig that hole even further. And so what he's doing here, and what those in power are doing in regard to barring people from running because they know that that individual is more likely to win in upcoming elections, is disgusting and devastating. And then add the fact that right now Maduro is in Cuba, right?
Yeah.
And he's meeting with, sorry if I'm stepping on your toes, I don't know if you were gonna mention this part, but he's meeting with essentially the Latin American version of NAFTA. It's known as ALBA, and it's like a socialist, social democratic organization. It's like an alliance of various countries. Cuba is one of them. Cuba and Venezuela created this alliance to begin with back in 2004. It does not send a good message to your people when you meet with Fidel Castro. It just doesn't. It's a bad idea right now. And right now a lot of the protesters see it as a vacation. And for those who know what he's actually there for, which is probably some economic help, it still doesn't look good, because what's Cuba gonna do for you right now? You know what I'm saying?
Meeting with the brother, not Fidel.
Yeah,
What's the
yeah, yeah.
brother's
Oh,
name?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Raul Castro.
That would have been horrible if it was meeting with Fidel Castro.
I'm sorry. I
'cause he's
misspoke.
dead.
Raul Castro. I apologize.
Hey, look, when things get rough, a seance might be your only option.
Well, let me say something. Let me tell you something. I got to thank you, and I got to thank you, and I got to thank the Young Turks, because I'm learning a lot. Because in all honesty, I didn't even know this was happening, because I've been watching American
U.S. media
news.
hasn't really been covering
U.S. media. All I knew that happened was Homeland season 7 or whatever it is just ended. I know that Caitlyn Jenner got in trouble for the Pepsi commercial, and
it's Kendall.
Kendall, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know.
Why they got to drag Caitlyn into this mess?
Not Caitlyn, Kendall, But it's amazing, because what's interesting is, as an Iranian American watching what you guys just showed me, it reminds me a lot of 2009 when there was the protests in Iran after the elections. And the other thing that this makes me think about is, it's unfortunate that we don't learn more about the history of the world, because I honestly don't know what you just said right now about Maduro. I agree with you. Like, I would think to myself, oh, he's a leftist. I tend to lean for the leftist because they're thinking about the people. But then you're right, they're grabbing for power. So leftist doesn't always equal a good thing.
It doesn't.
And we don't. And I was just reading about John Leguizamo, who's doing a show, I guess a new show, where he talks about Latino history in America, and he goes, I never learned that in America, and we don't learn these things in America
because we're very self-absorbed as a country, and so right now, if you watch the media, and we try to be cognizant of this as well, because I think sometimes we unfortunately fall into this pattern. We focus way too much on domestic policy or U.S. foreign policy, as opposed to all these other countries that are dealing with unrest, that are dealing with this rise of dictators and just essentially a power grab, and that's what we're seeing in Venezuela right now.
But you can also learn. I'm sorry, one last thing. You can also learn a lot from these things, because as you're speaking about this, I'm reminded a little bit about some of the things that are going on here. As Trump criticizes the press and tries to delegitimize the press, calling them fake news, as he just puts out executive orders, slowly but surely, we feel like, oh, you can start creeping in that direction, and before you know it, he could say, well, this guy's not allowed to run, and this guy's not allowed to run, and then we could, what I'm saying? That's an extreme example, but it is a warning to what we have.
Yeah, you need to learn about what's happening in other countries, just so you don't repeat the same mistakes. And by the way, I just want to clarify one quick thing. The reason why I think it's a little problematic for Maduro to meet with Raul Castro right now is because you have a situation in Cuba where anyone who disagrees with the government, if there's any dissent, they get shut down immediately. There's some serious ramifications to that. And Maduro is following suit. He's using the same type of tactics in his own country. And so that doesn't send a good message to your people.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, look, we want to see this sort of activism, both in the US where it's necessary, but also you're seeing it here, and with much more threat of violence. People have already died, people are being locked up. At any time, the death toll could rise. I mean, if the police are given an order, if the situation spirals out of control, I mean, they're facing really harsh circumstances. And it's not the first time. I mean, we covered a couple of years ago the student protests in South America as well. There's a history of this sort of activism at the risk of your own life to try to change things, and things desperately need to change there. So we're gonna keep an eye on this situation. We do unfortunately have to take our second break though. When we come back, we've got one more story for you. Let us know what you think about the topics we've covered already. Hashtag TYT Live. We'll be back in just a few.
We talk about TYT Army being so strong. Usually they help us run our show. Now they're gonna help us run the country.
Like this.
It's time that we reclaim democracy for the people.
We had a huge victory for Wolfpack.
When Lincoln said this was a country by, of, and for, he said of the people, not of corporations.
Our representatives don't represent us. Whoa, democracy!
United, we are too strong.
There's thousands of volunteers, and you could be among them.
With Wolfpack, the mission is so clear.
Money is killing our democracy.
96% of Americans want it.
When you get the power back, oh, that feels good. This is just the beginning. Let's go get them, man. Up and at them. Knock, knock.
We're coming for them.
Wolf-pack.com.
They'd rather lose to Republicans than have a progressive win with them. That's how dumb the corporate Democrats are.
It's the Democrats who lull you to sleep, and at the end of the day, they're the ones who push the right-wing agenda.
Most of the people are either unemployed, underemployed, or fucked.
This is why you lost to Trump, you fucking moron. What the fuck is wrong with you? Whoever wrote that, I'm sure they were typing with one hand and going like this with you. The Democrats are dead. The way you feel right now, that's how a chump feels. Do not freak out.
Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Welcome to the nerd life.
Welcome to Nerd Alert, everyone. We have an exciting show for you this week.
Glad to communicate with all the nerds out there.
What's beautiful about geeks is geeks are open to everybody. That's the thing. It's like, so you got your thing, I got my thing. It's like, and if you're not, then you're a bad geek.
Why did you choose Battlestar Galactica? Because it's awesome? No kidding. The floor is not lava. Yoshi!
And there's one very special characteristic that many men have been interested in. Penis size. What's up, friend?
Yeah, I know that curve.
And that movie is the Valentine's Day romantic classic, Deadpool.
Whoa, wait a second, Doc. You mean to tell me that this is a nerd alert? That's right, Marty. We've entered a nerd alert.
Isn't that right? How can you improve pizza? With math, of course.
If we spilled goldfish crackers on the floor and we didn't want to clean them up, so we thought that if we stomped on them an infinite amount of times, they would mathematically cease to exist.
We are ready for a Wonder Woman movie. Oh wait, no, let me correct myself. We were ready for a Wonder Woman movie years ago.
I'm Joss Whedon, and you're watching Nerd Alert.
Welcome back to the first hour of the Young Turks, everybody. John and Anna and Maz. We've got one more story we want to get to before the close of the first hour, so I'm going to jump right into it. Thanks to a law that Donald Trump signed earlier this year, Planned Parenthood's funding is now in serious jeopardy across the country. But some states are not taking it lying down. And Maryland just passed a law that would actually refund Planned Parenthood if Congress defunded it. The new protection measure would preserve access to preventive care services for 25,000 people in the state. $2 million from Maryland's Medicaid budget and $700,000 from its general fund will be directed toward the services that Planned Parenthood provides, which, again, I just want to repeat this in case any Republican lawmakers are watching this. For many people, men and women, that's the only clinic you can go to. It's not just an abortion factory. It is the source of healthcare for a lot of people, and they are eagerly going to try to take it away. Now, the reason I want to talk about this is not just that it's great that Planned Parenthood, which is, by the way, apparently the most popular political organization in the country, I just saw a recent poll, is being protected. That's great. But the damage that Donald Trump and Republicans can do across the country is not something that we simply have to accept. You can get involved in your local and state governments, and you can pass measures like this to try to stop that damage, to ward off as much of it as possible until we get sane national governance again. And it goes beyond just Planned Parenthood. So lawmakers in Nevada are trying to pass bills that enable women to access 12-month birth control supplies. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced in January that he would expand reproductive rights protections for New Yorkers, requiring health insurers to cover medically necessary abortions and most forms of birth control. But even wider than that, in California, some bills are being considered. I think one was already passed, that if some climate change laws were passed nationally, we would be able to retain our more stringent requirements in terms of fuel efficiency standards and things like that. And I know, Anna, in the second hour, you're gonna be talking about the expansion of tuition-free college.
Right.
And so all this action is happening on the state level, and I think that that is a great sign considering how big of a threat we face from Washington, D.C.
Absolutely. I think that it's important to keep in mind that your local politicians are more likely to represent you and your best interests if you are involved and politically active in your state or your municipality, right? So these are things that you should pay very close attention to. I think that one of the biggest failures of the electorate and the media is that we focus way too much on politics on a federal level. And look, we cover a lot of national news here, but again, pay close attention to what's happening on a local level because it's incredibly important for you to know who the incumbent, politician is. Oftentimes the incumbent just gets reelected over and over again. Sometimes they don't even get challenged. So just educate yourself on those issues because these are the people who will look out for you and your best interests. I know in California, there have been a number of actions taken to kind of mitigate the negative impact of Trump's administration. We want to continue fighting for the environment. We want to continue fighting for undocumented immigrants. We want to continue doing what makes California such a great state. And I hope that you guys are aware of what's happening in your states and you're politically active.
Yeah, this reminds me a little bit. First of all, I think it's great that Maryland's doing this. This reminds me a little bit of how when Trump cut the I think the EPA by like $2 billion or something,
Right.
and then donated $75,000 of his own money and made a big deal out of it. I was like, really, jackass? Really? You're gonna do the $2 billion cut and here's $75,000?
Let's call it even.
Let's call it even.
Yeah, exactly. And so look, you should definitely pay attention to the elections. And state level elections are happening all the time because we have a weird system in America where we never stop having elections. And look into who your state representatives are. State legislatures are incredibly important. Who's running to be governor, for instance. But you don't have to just vote for politicians. You can also run at the state or local level. You could get involved directly in politics. And there are organizations, some longstanding, some that have been set up recently, like Bernie Sanders' efforts to try to draft people to run. There's Justice Democrats as well. You can get involved, not just through like proxy politicians voting for them, but actually running and championing laws that are gonna be forgotten or that there's not gonna be progress on for the next 4 years. There's no reason that, just like with Maryland, we don't have to lay down and take it from DC. We can stop the damage from being done. And I'm glad that there are state level politicians who are not just going to be doing this, but are already doing it. And we're gonna spotlight as many laws as we can that are passed that are positive, but we're inevitably gonna miss some. But understand that fight is being waged at the state level, and it's important that is happening. Anyway, want to thank you guys for joining me in the first hour. Maz, always great to have you back on the show. We should make it more than once a year.
I would love to come back more than once a year, yeah.
But you're going to be busy in the near future. You want to tell us about the shows you have coming up?
Absolutely. I got this Saturday, April 15th, I'm taping my new Netflix special at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And then Saturday, April 22nd, I'm going to be at the Saban Theater doing another big show where I'll be running over an hour. I have 4 or 5 comedians opening for me. And then after that, I'll be in San Francisco, New York. I'm going to Montreal for the Comedy Festival this summer. So all the tickets, mazurbanni.com. I got a lot of Trump material and then a lot of material about being a dad. So come on out.
You have any idea when that's going to be released on Netflix, the new special?
We don't have an exact date yet, but we're hoping sometime mid to late summer.
Okay, awesome. Oh, they can really turn that around fast. Louis C.K.'s, they released it, I think, less than a month after they taped it.
Yeah, he taped it pretty fast.
Netflix is agile.
Yeah.
So Anna, you're going to be doing the second hour with Hassan and Grace. Sorry about that.
Sorry.
So you're going to be coughing through the second hour with Hassan and Grace. What can we expect in the second hour?
All right, so I'm sure many of you have heard of Sean Spicer's gaffes related to the Holocaust today. So we will be talking about that. And we will also discuss New York and free tuition. There are some caveats to that story, and I want to make sure that our audience knows what those caveats are. Lots of really great stories, so you want to stick around and watch them.
So we're going to take our little break right now. Continue tweeting us at #TYT Live, and we'll be back before you know it.
Do you trust the establishment media?
The United States economy has never been better. Monetary policy is spectacular.
Everybody thought Jamie Dimon was the king of Wall Street last week. Well, it might be Ken Lewis now. He takes the crown. The best sales force out there is Merrill Lynch, and now it goes to BofA. It's pretty amazing.
Pretty amazing. Lewis now. Buying opportunity. I do think this is a buying opportunity. We're going to see a stabilization and just a tremendous snapback. The rally will be jaw-dropping.
The Occupy Wall Street movement is not a spontaneous protest against economic inequality.
This is what we mean by the establishment press.
It is a well-thought-out campaign.
A well-thought-out campaign to bring down the infrastructure of this country.
The embarrassment is that I'm given credibility in this world because of the disappointment that the public has in what the news media does.
I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee, and I've learned a little bit about the cost of war. What the president is trying to do, and I agree with him, is to do everything that we can without going to war.
So what do you say to your critics? I'm talking about Democratic critics who say, you know what, he's really just a socialist pacifist.
I very rarely read in any coverage of Bernie that he's a socialist.
Bernie Sanders is a socialist, for God's sake.
Most analysts are saying that Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide.
I continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
We've got Trump at 279, 259.
Wait a minute. I'm winning the presidency.
I know you don't believe that. Sorry to laugh.
We're not going to be polite anymore. You know what we're going to do? We're going to fight back. Fight for a free and independent media. We're done with politeness. We fight back. We are going to put together the best investigative reporting team in the country. You like Jordan Chariton in the field, challenging Democrats? He's the one that took down Donald Brazil. Thank God for that. You know, give me 10 Jordan Charitons. Look at the damage I could do. TYT will give you the 4 horsemen, and we will let them gallop. Help unleash real journalism in the country. We don't need anybody else anymore but you guys. TYTnetwork.com/go. This is going to be amazing.
I just closed my Wells Fargo account.
I just divested funds from Wells Fargo.
I definitely urge you to do the same.
Please come divest. Divest today from all the big banks. Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Citibank, Chase. There are so many others. Do it. We can make a difference. Water is life.
Welcome back to TYT Sports. Jason and Francis here. This is where everybody has to listen. Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. I am your host, Francis Maxwell. Jason here. Welcome to TYT Sports. Turks and Jerks. TYT Sports.
Steph Curry signed with Under Armour.
Tom Brady's mad, by the way.
Do you hear me? Back on TYT Sports!
Actually, leave a link in the description box below instead of lying about leaving a link in the description box below.
Editor, throw up another picture of the UK bacon. And another. And in fact, throw in another one.
Let me see your belly.
Beast mode.
be brought into 70s porn music. Welcome back to TYT, Anna Kasperi and Grace Baldridge. Not
That's my
Hell
new
Big.
single.
And
We wish it was hell big, but it's not. It's unfortunately the other Grace.
I do not wish. I'm glad that Grace Baldridge is with us and Hassan Piker.
Almost every day.
What?
I wish you were Grace.
I wish you were Hassan Minaj. How about that?
Oh! From the top rope, Grace Helbig comes in with the kill. You know Hassan Minhaj, actually, the better Hassan, as people like to call him.
I don't care. Okay,
is
so let's
hosting the
move
White
on.
House Correspondence Dinner.
Yeah, I know.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
For all Hassans.
We get lost in tangents a little too easily, so I want to focus, because there's a lot to get to today, and it's important that we do. So let's go ahead and encourage you guys to use the hashtag TYT Live. We will read your tweets during the break and respond to them when we come back. And I'm ready to get started. You guys ready? All right.
Born ready.
Sean Spicer has been criticized quite a bit after his press conference today, where he had a number of gaffes related to the Holocaust and Donald Trump's decision to take action in Syria. Now, we're gonna show you the video of what he said and why he got into so much trouble as a result of what he said. Let's take a look.
We didn't use chemical weapons in World War II. You know, you had someone as despicable as Hitler who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons. So you have to, if you're Russia, ask yourself, is this a country that you and a regime that you want to align yourself with? Russia put their name on the line. So it's not a question of how long that alliance has lasted, but at what point do they recognize that they are now getting on the wrong side of history in a really bad way really quickly?
So I think most people know that Hitler did use chemical weapons, not on the battlefield, but he used gas chambers to kill a lot of people. And so that statement obviously needed some clarification. And luckily a reporter asked for that clarification. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
I just want to give you the opportunity to clarify something you said that seems to be gaining some traction right now. Quote, Hitler didn't even sink to the level of using chemical weapons. What did you mean by that?
I think when you come to sarin gas, he was not using the gas on his own people the same way that Assad is doing. I mean, there was clearly. I understand your point. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. There was not in the. He brought him into the Holocaust Center. I understand that, but I'm saying in the way that Assad used them, where he went into towns, dropped them down to innocent into the middle of towns. It was brought to so the use of it. I appreciate the clarification there. That was not the intent.
Okay, so he clarified. He did mispronounce Assad's name in the beginning, and then
What's a Holocaust Center? Is that like that sounds like a cultural center where people gather and do community activities relating to the Holocaust? I guess is that what in Sean Spicer's mind? I'm assuming that's what happens.
I don't know what was going on in his head. I don't know if he was just having a bad day and he misspoke and it was just gaffe after gaffe. But it was a nightmare, and as a result, there have been many people calling for his resignation. And I want to just quickly mention that before we get into a little more of what happened and why this happened. So apparently the Anne Frank Center for Mutual Respect is calling for his resignation. They say that Spicer's statement is the most evil slur upon a group of people who we have ever heard from a White House press secretary. Sean Spicer now lacks the integrity to serve as White House press secretary, and President Trump must fire him at once. That was the statement that they released. Nancy Pelosi released a similar statement, but I'm much less interested in reading that because it's Nancy Pelosi. There's a political component to that whatever. But anyway, that was a really, really bad way of handling that question, right? I don't know why he went in that direction. I think it was insanely irresponsible to talk about what happened in the Holocaust in the way that he did. I'm glad that he was asked for clarification because maybe he did misspeak, but what do you guys take of all of this?
Wait, by the way, first you said Sean Spicer's having a bad day. Sean Spicer's been having bad days every single day since he came into office. Like literally every day for Sean Spicer's a bad day. He is gaffes over gaffes over gaffes every single day. This is just really irresponsible and almost insane to say. Like, do you have no one on your team that could possibly check you? Now, having said that, what I wanted to also point out that was that there is one positive outcome of this. We know that Donald Trump loves being in the spotlight. Certain insiders have mentioned that Donald Trump loves being in the spotlight so much that he hated that Steve Bannon was kind of taking away from that. And when a lot of people started calling him President Bannon, obviously there's a whole Jared Kushner, Steve Bannon thing going on behind the scenes as well. But that was one of the reasons why Steve Bannon was ousted. We know for a fact that Donald Trump usually, like in the Mar-a-Lago instance where he was describing the Syrian situation, did not want Sean Spicer to have a public press conference because they wanted Donald Trump to be the headline. They wanted his statements to lead the news on that day. So if Sean Spicer keeps messing up like this, eventually what's gonna happen is Donald Trump is gonna ironically fire him, not because of incompetency, but because he keeps taking up the headlines that should be reserved for our dear Supreme Leader.
Yeah, that's an interesting take. I don't know if that's the reason, he would either be forced to resign or get fired by Trump. I just know that he is not doing a great job with these press conferences.
Awful.
He's very combative. And look, it's a very difficult job, especially when you consider the fact that as press secretary, it is your duty and responsibility to come up with answers for what the president is doing. And right now, we have one of the most incompetent presidents of all time who apparently doesn't really have a strategy when it comes to Syria. Based on his own admission and based on Sean Spicer's admission, this was an action he took in Syria based on emotion, based on seeing the videos of the chemical attacks, having a strong emotion about it, and then acting kind of erratically without a strategy for the future.
Yeah,
so
I think you hit the nail on the head. At the very least, what we should expect from the United States press secretary when they are giving a press conference on military action in a foreign country is delicate, coherent wording. And that's not what we are getting from Sean Spicer. The Washington Post described this this press conference as Sean Spicer speaking in polemical dead ends. So it basically, when you think of like a high school history student, it's like, it's worse than Hitler. Like, just like when Hitler, you can't invoke the name of Hitler indelicately, which is what we see Sean Spicer do, and then he sort of has to backtrack with the help of the press corps being like,
that's right.
Yo, do you want to qualify that a little bit more? And then for him to make that correction and still be even more unclear, it's really frustrating because the American people deserve more. This is a major action that we're talking about here, and for us to walk away even more sort of confused about what is going on and what the relationship with Syria, Russia, and the United States is absolutely irresponsible. So I don't think he will get fired because, as Hassan, you pointed out, this is just a string of a number of gaffes on the part of Sean Spicer. But I think that this is a pretty serious gaffe.
You're right, and I think delicate wording is important, and he doesn't necessarily understand the importance of that, or at least he doesn't utilize that type of strategy when communicating with reporters and the American people about what's happening with this administration and how they plan to proceed with very important foreign policy decisions. And so, again, I think that he, whether it was intentional or unintentional, minimized, the atrocious behavior of Hitler to justify the behavior of Donald Trump, and that is not the right way to handle the situation.
And by the way, let's not I want to mention this. I always say this, Sean Spicer literally has the hardest job in America right now. It is harder than any other job possible. But on top of that, he's also very bad at his job. And what I mean by that is he could just straight up be like, we're gonna move along. We're gonna move away from this question and talk about what I want to talk about as, the press secretary. We're not gonna talk about what you want me to talk about here. You could just literally say no comment, but yet Sean Spicer always likes to spice it up and put his take on particular matters. And in this one, it was in poor taste. And I don't want to seem soft on Russia by any means. I probably have a different approach to how I would handle the current situation than the administration is doing. But, and I talk about that in my videos, you should go check them out. But there is one thing. If we're talking about historical context, if there's anyone that knows what Hitler did in World War II, it's Russia. Not to appear soft towards Russia or anything. I'm not like a Russian agent or a sympathizer by any means, but history will show you that Russians knew what Hitler was doing, at least even a little bit before the British and the Americans did. So anyway, that's another tidbit that I wanted to add on there.
Yeah.
But the context behind why he said this is also incredibly important, because they're trying to portray the picture that we're not soft on Russia. We are just trying, like, they're our enemies as well. It's a total BS.
It's a good way of distracting from the Russia investigations, or at least making it appear that there's no collusion, there are no weird alliances between the administration and Putin, because hey, we went against what Russia wanted and did what we did. And so whether this action was politically motivated, which of course that is a huge possibility, or just straight emotionally motivated, it doesn't matter. Either reason for doing what Trump did is not good enough. You need to have a sound foreign policy and then a follow-up strategy. And it doesn't seem as though that is the case at all. It also doesn't seem as though anyone in that administration at the moment understands the nuances of what's happening in Syria, understands the different factions and different countries that play a role in what's happening in Syria. And that is not good news for our military and the American people. So that's what I'm most concerned about. This gaffe was horrendous, but it's just another symptom of the type of behavior we're seeing in this White House. All right, we got to move on to some other news, so let's do that. Donald Trump's son, Eric, recently had an interview with The Telegraph, which is a publication in the UK. And he was asked about a number of things, including nepotism within the White House and also Donald Trump's decision to take action in Syria. Now, those two things are actually related. So let's focus on nepotism and how that played a role in what Donald Trump decided to do. Now, when it comes to nepotism, Eric Trump not only agrees that it plays a role in the White House, he thinks it's a great thing. He says, you trust the people who you are closest to. Okay, fair enough. He also says he, meaning Trump, knows I care about the family. He knows I care about the brand. He knows I deeply care about the properties, our amazing teams. Okay, so essentially he's saying, well, look, my dad knows I care about these issues, so of course nepotism is a great thing because I'm gonna do a better job than anyone else, right? He continues, is that nepotism? Absolutely. Is that also a beautiful thing? Absolutely. Family business is a beautiful thing. Okay.
He's starting to sound like his dad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a product of Trump, and it doesn't surprise me that he would openly and transparently applaud nepotism, whether it be in business or the White House. Trump's 33-year-old son, Eric, also told the Daily Telegraph on Monday that the strike in Syria was influenced in part by Ivanka, who he said was heartbroken and outraged by the chemical attack. Ivanka is a mother of 3 kids and she has influence. I'm sure she said, listen, this is horrible stuff. My father will act in times like that. Okay, so obviously, nepotism plays a role when it comes to the White House because you have Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner, working very closely with Donald Trump. They have positions, official positions within the White House. And so I think that this says a lot about what the future of this administration is going to be like. And I also think that it's interesting that Ivanka continuously gets, perceived and represented in the media as like this secret liberal, right? Who's looking out for women, and she's not really complicit. She doesn't think she's complicit, she's trying to do good. Well, if this is the one example of her having some sway over Trump, it's a pretty bad example if you're trying to make an argument that she's gonna look out for liberal interests. But anyway, go ahead, I want you guys to jump in.
First of all, let me just address the irony that I'm doing a story on nepotism, but having said that, let's move past that point and I'll read all your comments later. But you nailed it on the head with the Ivanka thing. Like everyone talks about Ivanka and Jared Kushner, and there's a very important reason for that. And that's not just because Donald Trump is sexually attracted to his daughter, and that's a fact that he's mentioned over and over again, but because they're elitist New York socialites. And the media loves elitist New York socialites because Donald Trump is like weird and says crazy things, so like they can't really understand him. But Ivanka and Jared Kushner, they understand. They're like, we rub shoulders with them. We get that. They're celebrities in their own way. And Jared's brother is dating Carly Kloss, and Carly Kloss voted for Hillary Clinton. Like, what's that about? And in the end of the day, I doubt that Ivanka has even the slightest bit of influence over her father. And even if she does, where was her heartbroken influence when her dad was executive ordering the Muslim ban? Where was her influence over the healthcare bill. Like, if she's so sympathetic and if she's such an outspoken secret liberal, then, and if she has so much persuasive power over her father, where is her influence when it comes to like literally 98% of the other things that his dad does that are awful for the country? And this really pisses me off because we constantly set the bar so low for these people. It's just like when Donald Trump bombs the hell out of a Syrian base after informing the Russians that they're coming to bomb them through the proper protocols. And then everyone's applauding like, this is it. This is the first time he's been presidential. How is this the first time he's been presidential?
He's never been presidential. And if your standard for presidential is someone taking action, military action in another country, or using missiles against another country based on emotion or advice from their child or their daughter, then your bar for presidential is very low. But Grace, I want you to jump in because I actually do think, and tell me if you disagree, because I might be wrong. I actually do think that Ivanka Trump has influence over Donald Trump. I think that he does respect and take into account her positions on issues. I just disagree that she's a liberal. I don't know where that comes from. If you look at her own business practices, you will see that she does not believe in liberal policies pertaining to employment and taking care of your workers. So I don't know why anyone would think she is, but I don't know, I could be wrong.
Well, no, I completely agree with everything you said. I think that the favoritism that Donald Trump shows to his daughter Ivanka is, it's very apparent. You see it in every single interview when he talks about her, the access that she has to his administration, to policy, and but this interview with the Daily Telegraph with Eric Trump is very troubling to me for a number of reasons. One, there's the nepotism and sort of the acceptance of just like nepotism is the way of life in the Trump family. But aside from that, it felt reading through it incredibly emotionally manipulative, and also it feels as though we're being primed that when the American people will read this interview, that we are being primed for the military actions that are to come or that have already happened. And that's what made me really frustrated reading this through, because you have Eric Trump appealing to your emotional sensibilities, saying, oh, she was so heartbroken, the outrage of these children being gassed, it's so sad. And how could he have the audacity, how could this administration have the audacity in the same breath that they are calling for military action against the Syrian regime, and they won't, in that same breath, they won't make a change to alter their stance on the Syrian refugee crisis. But yet they still want to appeal to us emotionally, because then people that aren't well informed on the situation will be like, well, they have to do something, they have to step in as long as the refugees aren't coming here. And that's why I feel like this interview is really gross, because it is Eric Trump, who we actually don't hear from a lot, stepping up and sort of and acting as the manipulator on behalf of his family. Because again, he talked about the nepotism, so he wants to do the family brand. You always trust the people that are closest to you. He said it best. So it feels like he's sort of doing their dirty work in appealing to our sensibilities.
There's a positive outcome to this, though.
Okay, hold on for a second though, because I wanted to add one quick thing. Look, I think I lost my train of thought. It's okay, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I'm so sorry. Well, the one positive outcome out of all of this is that Eric Trump, much like the rest of the Trump family, will eventually step over his own words and say something and admit something without really realizing that he's admitting it. And one thing that really stood out to me in this interview was that when he said, if there was anything that the strike on Syria did, it was to validate the fact that there is no Russia tie. Now, a lot of people aren't even focusing on this because there's so much more in the interview that you can focus on, but like that is so stupid. And he's basically admitting the real reason behind why Donald Trump did this. Donald Trump was given 3 different, like this is according to the press corps that was at Mar-a-Lago, he was given 3 options and he chose this one. One was heavily militarized, like boots on the ground. The other one was nothing, or a tweet or a strongly worded letter. And then this was the option that he took over the 3, and he chose it because it perfectly masks or misdirects the conversation away from the Russia ties, the Russia investigation that he, by the way, even though Devin Nunes recused himself of, he put in his other cronies in charge of that investigation, and slowly they'll push away that investigation and no one will talk about it anymore, while they point the finger at like, look, we can't love Russia. Look at what we're saying towards Russia. Look at how militant we've been against Russia.
Look, Eric Trump is not tactful. He was very transparent in the interview about one of the reasons why Trump might have taken some military action. I mean, he just straight out says that, like, we're not, all of a sudden we're not focusing on Russia anymore. Isn't that weird? So yeah, look, I think that there is a political motive behind what Trump did. I do think that Ivanka Trump has some influence over him. I do not believe for a second that Ivanka Trump is a liberal who's gonna look out for the best interests of social justice or anything like that. And the one thing that I wanted to add was, look, the chemical weapons and the chemical attack on Syrian civilians was horrendous, and it was the second time that it was done. But civilians have been targeted over and over again by Assad, okay? And that is something that we've been reporting on for a very long time. And you wanna know something? The right wing hasn't cared for 1 second. The Trump administration never cared. They never cared about the refugees that we've been begging this administration to allow into the country, the vast majority of which are innocent women and children who are just looking to survive. They had absolutely no sympathy for them. And now all of a sudden, oh my God, there were chemical weapons, and now we suddenly care. Not buying it for a second, not buying it for a second. There have been so many innocent Syrian civilians who have died as a result of this war, and no one in America has really cared about it. And so the fact that the media all of a sudden is rallying behind Trump and pretending like he's being presidential, no. First of all, the media is the problem. They didn't care to cover these stories of civilians dying as a result of the war, dying as a result of Assad. And it wasn't just collateral damage as the US has used in the past. These are people that were specifically targeted by Russia-backed Syrian forces. Again, Assad. So anyway, it's a really frustrating situation, and this whole thing with nepotism and the lack of strategy is very scary, not only for people in Syria, but also people here in the United States, and also members of our military who might, unfortunately, end up in Syria and might end up fighting a war that Trump has no real strategy for.
I'm just saying, I'm looking forward to more Eric Trump interviews, because if you remember, there was another Eric Trump interview, I believe, where he admitted, God damn it, what was it? Oh, wasn't it Eric Trump who said, my dad will still have power over the business, like I'll consult with him. Wasn't it another interview with Eric Trump? It was one of the two. But I'm just saying, like, the Trump children, with the exception of Ivanka, Ivanka's a little bit better with press, and Tiffany is unrelated to anything that is Trump related, because she's the ugly duckling according to Donald Trump, and she doesn't want to talk about her at all. But the other two male Trump children will constantly get press now, and it's exciting because they'll probably admit a lot of stuff, and it'll be great for us to find out.
Right. Well, we'll see. All right, guys, we got to take a break. When we come back, moving away from political news, giving you an update on one of the biggest stories of the week. United, just digging that hole.
Yes.
Just digging it. You don't want to miss that and more when we come back.
I got a bunch of things to go through. No Republican would have ever voted for Bernie. He would have done worse than Hillary Clinton.
They're so miserable. All right, I'm gonna stop myself before I say things that are offensive.
If I ran for office, and that would be a trippy day, right? I'd break even more rules than Trump. If I had all the money in the world, I would enjoy that. We have a great show for you. Steve's answer is C. Dave's is A, and the correct answer is, of course, B. You guys are the worst. Here's the story, and it's not funny. Steve is over too.
It seems just comically unfair and ridiculous. The Democratic Party just sucks right now. It just sucks because it doesn't know what it stands for.
We should probably wrap it up.
Can we eat in here?
The Gaslamp Killer, Piece to Absent presents 2016 shit.
I like drums. I like big drums. Heavy, funky, deep
drums. I'm not classically trained. I just started out as a record collector. I have synthesizers. I have all these modular synths and fun DJ tools that I use to make psychedelic sounds. It's not just the music. People want to leave their bodies in order to connect with the spirit world. And when you're making music, it's a similar kind of thing. You want to escape your day-to-day to leaving this shit behind and finding more of a deeper place to create from. That is the essence of gas lamp killer music.
What date are we recording this on?
Oh my God, it's 420. We'll be right back.
Please stand by.
A few minutes later, a little longer than a few minutes later, one eternity later.
All right, back on 420 old school. It's begun already, dude. It's begun. Okay, so during that break, there's some chance we did something.
2 days on time. You never walked into a factory, they always have about how many days without an accident? 2.
Someone as despicable as Hitler, who didn't even sink to using chemical weapons.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
Welcome back to TYT. Grace Baldridge is here with us,
Not Hellbrig.
Along with Hassan Piker, also known as Hassan the Hun, also known as, is there any other
Hassan
name?
D. Piker on Instagram.
Also known
but you
as
already knew that.
#WokeBay.
Oh yeah, the Woke Bay thing.
She used that in an article. I mean, she used that in one of her
one
videos.
of my Facebook videos.
Yeah, she goes, turns out you don't have to be Hassan Piker to be Woke Bay. I saw that, I blushed a little bit.
Yeah.
It was so
Did
nice
you
of
like that? I gave you some love.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Cool. I'm glad that you watched it. All right, so some TYT lives for you. Austin Swan, you are nice. He says, I love how inspiring your videos are during your breaks. Thank you. I didn't really notice them at all, to be honest. So I'm like,
we're just so used to being inspired. So it's like, we're, inspiration is sort of background noise when you're this enlightened.
Okay, so this tweet made me feel old because I don't understand.
Oh boy.
I don't understand the reference, but I think it's still funny. So Brian Newton says Ivanka Trump is the ultimate Becky. What does that mean?
Oh, Becky is like slang for white girl, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's like you'll say like Becky with the good hair
Well, that's from the Beyonce song.
No, but she's using that as I'm using that as a reference point for people to understand. That's what, like, it's a common term for white girl.
Oh my God, Ben Peck with a devastating tweet, so devastating. In response to the Sean Spicer story and how he essentially minimized the horrific behavior of Hitler, Ben Peck says, let's not forget that this was during Passover.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Man.
You know who didn't forget that? The Anne Frank Center and also various other, Jewish groups that tweeted out to fire Sean Spicer, and they're right.
I don't.
But I'm telling you, this is the call I'm making. Sean Spicer will only get fired once Trump is like, oh God, like he's taking up the spotlight from me, like because he keeps messing up, and then he'll get fired.
It's not a crazy hypothesis because Trump is really that small of a person and petty, yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised, but I really think that he's more likely to get fired. Spicer is more likely to get fired because he's not doing a good job. And
but like I feel like there's so few intelligent, available press secretary people that could take that position and be just do it in general. Because like and you hear about this with like the chief of staff position, like people don't want to be around Trump. They don't want to be associated with Trump. You really have to be slimy, even within the Republican administration. And by the way, that's setting the bar real low because a lot of those people are the worst.
I know, that's why I have no empathy or sympathy at all for Sean Spicer. Like this whole notion, oh, he's got such a tough job. No, he consented to that job. He wants that job. He's still doing
to do it.
Exactly.
He also, I think things would be a lot easier for him if he was a little bit more concise. He puts his foot in his mouth all the time because he spurts and he blurts when he talks. He doesn't really know where his sentence is going when he starts one. And so I think that if he were to just take a little minute, like take a second or two before answering a question, really think about what your answer is going to be before you just jump in and Melissa McCarthy the situation, because it does feel like he sort of assaults them with the podium sometimes.
I know,
dude, you're the press secretary. Do your fucking job.
No, but like he's the first press secretary.
You guys don't have to apologize when you curse. It's okay.
This also isn't going to be on the internet.
Sean Spicer is the first press secretary where the press is literally like, I hope he doesn't say things. Like I hope he says no comment. So I mean, actually, who am I kidding? We all love when he says dumb shit so we can talk about it, especially CNN.
All right, guys. Oh God, there's so many stories I want to get to today. Later on, we're going to give you an update on the LoveGov in Alabama. Interesting updates to that. But first, update on a story that we reported on yesterday. United Airlines CEO Oscar Munoz is apologizing after he released a letter to his staff, to all of his employees, essentially calling the passenger who was dragged off the plane disruptive and belligerent. Now, this is the story involving a man who was literally forced off the plane and his face was bloodied as a result because United overbooked the flight and then they had to choose people at random to take off the flight because no one was willing to give up their seat. Now, they had to make room for 4 of their employees and that's the reason why 4 people had to be taken off the flight. Now, for anyone who might have missed the video, I think it's important to show you what happened so you understand the severity of it and why so many people are enraged about what happened. It's a difficult video to watch. I actually hate watching it because it, I don't know, breaks my heart. But nonetheless, that's your warning. If you want to watch, here it is.
Guys, this is not right. Can't the pilots drive to Louisville? Can't they rent a car for the pilots and have them drive? Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! No! Oh my God! My God! What are you doing? No! This is wrong! Oh my God! Look at what you did to him! Oh my God!
Okay, so people were understandably upset after seeing that video. And you would think that United would have a more apologetic tone in response to this controversy, but that is not what happened. So Oscar Munoz, the CEO of United, sent this letter out to all of his employees. Here's what it said. The situation was unfortunately compounded when one of the passengers we politely asked to deplane refused, and it became necessary to contact Chicago aviation security officers to help. Our employees followed established procedures for dealing with situations like this. While I deeply regret this situation arose, I also emphatically stand behind all of you, and I want to commend you for continuing to go above and beyond to ensure we fly right. So to me, that shows a certain level of unapologetic behavior and defiance that is unacceptable. This guy's face was bloodied because you called aviation officials to drag him off the plane, and it was your bad, okay? You guys overbooked the flight. You guys have a policy of overbooking flights. And it's not just United, all airlines do it because they're like, hey, someone might not show up, but you're still making your money. You still sold that ticket. Why do you have to make even more money? Like double the money on one seat, which drives me insane. Anyway, moving on. Munoz added that when crew members first approached the passenger to tell him to leave, he raised his voice and refused to comply. And each time they asked, he refused and became more and more disruptive and belligerent. Okay, here's the thing. Flying, and I've said this before, but I want to repeat and really emphasize this. Flying and paying for a ticket, which costs hundreds of dollars in some cases, in other cases, thousands of dollars, okay? It's like the one thing where you can pay for a service and you're not guaranteed that service, right? Unacceptable. And the way that the CEO responded, even more unacceptable, okay? So he got a lot of heat for this, but I want you guys to chime in before I give you his follow-up to this letter.
It's just not, it's so inhumane. And you know what I really don't understand though? Like I kind of get why Oscar Munoz did this, okay? I explained this earlier today when the reason why he put out a statement like that and the reason why United originally tweeted out to the public, we're really sorry for overbooking the flight. And what they're doing there is trying to shift the responsibility away from them and trying to blame the Chicago police, which definitely bear a burden, definitely have a large percentage of the problem, But what I'm trying to say here is they are secretly, like, without literally going out and saying, this is the Chicago Police Department's fault. This is not our fault. We just overbooked the flight. Sorry about it. Like, sorry, not sorry. Whereas it's their fault as well. Like you mentioned.
They're alluding to that via omission because they say that it's all the flight staff followed protocol. I am emphatically behind our team. We fly right. We did everything right. And by doing so, they are shifting the blame onto the Chicago aviation security officers who were the ones that forcibly removed the gentleman from the flight.
Who are suspended, by the way. So like the Chicago aviation, the Chicago aviation has taken more responsibility over the actions than United has.
So a thing I want to bring up that people are getting a little upset about on Twitter is that about a week prior to this incident, the CEO was awarded as the communicator of the year by PR Week, which is a top communications publication, which just makes it extra funny to hear you read through that release that he sent to all the United employees.
In the wake of the leggings fiasco, which by the way is a different one.
Communicator of the year.
Which the leggings thing is not like an exact, it's not an exact comparison. We get that. We understand that they were flying for free. This person was paying, which is 100 times worse. But that was when he got that. That was when he got that award, when that was happening.
It reminds me of Obama receiving the Nobel Peace Prize as he's doing drone strikes and signature strikes and killing innocent civilians, which were then referred to as collateral damage. Like, I know that that's an extreme example, but it's just ironic that, this CEO.
Yeah, the irony is not lost.
Exactly. Now, understandably so, people did not like the fact that the passenger was called belligerent by the CEO.
Yeah, but did he show them his award though? Maybe
that he's a great communicator.
He was the, just tell them that.
Well, the CEO decided that, hey, maybe that was ill-advised. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So I am going to actually put out a real apology. Let me read that to you. This is just a portion of it that I think is the most relevant. He says, the truly horrific event that occurred on this flight has elicited many responses from all of us: outrage, anger, disappointment. I share all those sentiments. No, you don't. And above all, my deepest apologies for what happened. Like you, I continue to be disturbed by what happened on this flight, and I deeply apologize to the customer forcibly removed and to all the customers aboard. no one should ever be mistreated this way. And then he also says, I want you to know that we take full responsibility and we will work to make it right. He ends the apology by indicating that they plan on reviewing some of their procedures and possibly improving them moving forward. But here's procedure number one, okay, that you can immediately take action on and improve. Stop overbooking the flights, okay? I don't care if people don't show up. People have paid for it, so if they don't show up, that's on them. You've already made your money, okay? United is really struggling to make a profit right now. And I think part of the reason why they're struggling is because they suck. And maybe you'll suck a little less if you stop overbooking flights. Look, I personally experienced this with a United flight, actually. I missed my flight to Chicago because I had the audacity to show up 20 minutes before they took off, right? I thought 20 minutes was enough time. Their policy indicated that they closed the gate at 15 minutes before the flight is supposed to take off. I was there 5 minutes earlier, but they had already given away my seat. You know why? Because they overbooked the flight. That's what they do, okay? And I'm sick of it, and I'm sick of them being unapologetic about it and refusing to change their policies. I know that there were, certain politicians that lifted regulations pertaining to these airlines, and that's the reason why they get to screw us as much as they want. But no more of this, okay? The overbooking situation is unacceptable and it needs to stop.
Also, let's recognize this Twitter apology from him for what it is. It is a reaction to their stock plummeting.
I know.
United stock has tanked, and so they needed to go for a different PR strategy. And as the communicator of the year, someone had the bright idea that why don't we try empathy and see how that works.
I heard he was drinking a Pepsi Cola as he tweeted that out. Like, hey guys, look, I'm patching everything up. This is how we do it in the corporate world, right?
I heard Kendall Jenner handed him that Pepsi Cola, and then he realized, let's try compassion.
Of course. But yeah, you're absolutely right about government regulation. I think a part of the overbooking problem is largely related to the lack of regulation that surrounds the airline industry and the fact that there are 3 or 4 airlines that essentially own more than 70% of domestic aviation at this point. So they can do whatever the hell they want. And by the way, they do price fixing as well, which is illegal, which the government is currently investigating. However, aside from price fixing and price leadership, this is like overbooking is a major problem.
It is a major problem, and this is just one example, and there are many examples out there. For why I think libertarians are so incredibly naive when it comes to their political ideology and what they think about regulations and corporations and all of that. You think corporations are gonna look out for us? You think that a free market is gonna lead to them not screwing us over? I mean, look at that. Look, I don't like overregulation. I hate overregulation, okay? And believe me, there are certain things that I think are overregulated, like our food service industry, especially in Los Angeles. But anyway, that's a completely different story. But in this case, you need regulations to protect the consumer. If I am paying for a seat, I should be entitled to that seat, okay? Unless I'm being unruly or I'm threatening people or I'm breaking the law, that I totally understand. But if I'm a paying customer and there are no other problems, right? I should be entitled to that seat. If I don't show up, who cares, okay? That's on me. That's not on the airline. They're not gonna lose anything. That seat has already been paid for. And people can never get refunds for their flights. Like, it's the hardest thing to do.
And by the way, they're legally obligated, and yet they find loopholes around it as well. Like, for example, one thing is Grace and I covered 11 ways to get kicked off of planes legally, like recently. And one thing that they have in writing, and you should know your rights, you can go back and ask for a refund and they have to give it to you as long as it's up to $650 max. And if it's from one urban area to another highly populated urban area like Los Angeles to New York, that same day ticket price is not going to be $650, it's gonna be way more. But you still can get at least that if they don't, if you miss your flight or if they kick you off or anything like that happens.
Anyway, we'll see how this story develops, but I hope that people don't just forget about it and then nothing's done, because again, there are certain actions that need to be taken to protect the consumer. Just because all of these airlines are merging and we have less options doesn't mean that they get to take advantage of us like this. All right, moving on. Alabama's Governor Robert Bentley has agreed to resign after negotiations following a report indicating that he not only had a questionable affair, but he used taxpayer money to maintain that affair and also cover it up. Also, we have some evidence based on that report indicating that he took some action regarding DMVs in predominantly black neighborhoods and how he essentially shut them down for political reasons. So the governor reached an agreement with state lawmakers and law enforcement officials early Monday morning, that was yesterday, to step down. The terms of the deal were not immediately available. Now, a report was released by Jack Sharman, who is the House Judiciary Committee's special counsel. And the report and its supporting documentation revealed embarrassing details about Bentley's relationship with former aide Rebecca Mason and provided evidence of potential criminal misuse of state resources. Now, last Friday when we covered this story, of course, he hadn't resigned yet. He was actually being very defiant, but we did show you or have you listen to audio evidence of the affair that he had. I apologize if you've already heard this and you have to listen to it again, but I am gonna play it. Let's take a listen.
When I stand behind you and I put my arms around you and I put my hands on your breast and I put my hands on you and pull you in real close. I love that too. Put my hands under you.
You know, he's
talking in the bathroom?
He's in the 70s. He's talking about cupping her ample bosom.
By the
from
way,
behind.
Remarkably similar to Bill O'Reilly's conversations that took place from what we know from the sexual harassment thing and also his audiobook.
This is incredible. So again, I've said this before. And I want to repeat it again. I don't care about the affair, right? Even if he's like a family values conservative dude, yes, there's the hypocrisy. Yes, it's annoying. And that's enough to really anger people. The part that really frustrated me about his actions were the misuse of taxpayer money. And then now, all of a sudden, we have more information about what he did because of this report, and it has to do with voting rights. It has to do with, political manipulation and exploiting people, coercion. And so we'll get to that in just a second. But Grace, you look like you want to jump in.
Oh, there's just so much with this guy. Where to begin? I mean, we could talk about the prison situation going on in Alabama right now and his proposal for just more mass incarceration because that's what he feels is the solvent for what's going on in these overpopulated Alabama prisons. Or we could talk about the closures of multiple DMVs, 8 out of 10 of which were in districts of color.
Yep.
Predominantly Americans of color. I mean, where to start with this guy?
While also supplementing it with voter ID laws so that they can effectively eliminate people from voting.
Or pocket vetoing when the Democrats propose something like, all right, look, fine, you want to close our DMVs, what about longer hours for the DMVs that we do have? And you just pocket vetoed it. What a bitch move. This guy sucks on every level.
He does. So let me fill in the blanks with that component of the story because it's incredibly important and no one else is focused on it because let's keep it real, a sex scandal is much more, titillating than talking
Great
about
use of the word titillating.
Right? Rather than focusing on the people who have been disenfranchised and had their voting rights taken away from them as a result of this scummy guy. So apparently his administration's decision to close 31 driver's license offices, many in African-American heavy counties, prompting a national outcry over how the closures would affect voting rights in the state, which requires a photo ID to vote. So action number 1 was you need a photo ID to vote. Keep in mind that a lot of people who live in these predominantly black neighborhoods don't have photo IDs because they rely heavily on public transportation and they never needed to get a photo ID. So that already affected them negatively when it came to voting. And then all of a sudden you shut down DMVs in predominantly black neighborhoods. And so it becomes even more harder to get the ID. So you're probably thinking this only has to do with discrimination. This only has to do with them shutting the opposition by, making it even more difficult or in some cases almost impossible to vote. So that's bad enough. But this was also done as a way to basically convince lawmakers to go along with his budget proposal because he proposed a budget that would raise taxes and also spend a lot more of taxpayer money. And a lot of lawmakers in the state were like, no, well, this is not a good idea. So they did not want to sign on to it. And as a result, he was like, I might shut down the DMVs in your neighborhood unless you do unless you agree with me.
Yeah, because we're talking about a budget proposal that in large part was for something like 800 million. That's not right. But it was for a lot.
You're right.
It wasn't $800 million for a prison.
It's $800 million to build 4 new prisons while closing 16, while the state is closing down 16 closures.
The closures that were taking place were affecting an area of Alabama called the Black Belt, basically the African American communities in Alabama. And then, so when the lawmakers were being threatened by this, it was because he wasn't, they weren't supporting this budget that also disproportionately affected the constituents of those counties because prisons, as we know, disproportionately affect Black Americans. So it's so sick and it's so gross. And Alabama has these insane mandatory minimums. It's so frustrating to read this through.
The good news is because of this report, because of this investigation, he will be stepping down. Again, he was fighting tooth and nail to remain in his position, even though there were so many instances of wrongdoing here. And so I'm glad that there was action taken against him and he will step down as a result. But it's just very important for everyone to keep a very close eye on what lawmakers are doing in various states when it comes to voting, whether it's gerrymandering, which John Oliver did an excellent piece on, you guys should all check it out, or closing down DMVs, passing these voter ID laws. I mean, on its face, voter ID laws seem like they make a lot of sense. Like everyone should have an ID when they vote, except voter fraud is not an issue. The only time we ever hear about voter fraud is when there's a Republican doing it. And also, a lot of people don't have driver's licenses because they don't drive. They don't have state IDs because they don't need state IDs. So those are usually the people that rely on things like public transportation. These are ways to essentially do away with our democratic system or whatever's left of it, right? And so just be very cognizant of that and very suspicious when you see this type of behavior.
I wanted to make a correction. It's 13 out of the 15 state facilities that are prisons that are being shut down. I said 16 originally. And also, one little last tidbit of irony in this entire, this delicious cake of weirdness here in Alabama. When he got caught, and he got caught for using state funds. He wasn't charged with a prison sentence, even though he's very gung-ho on crime himself. Ironically, when he committed a crime, he only got 30 days of community service. Fuck you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right.
But fuck you.
We are unfortunately running out of time, but I just want to quickly mention the fact that, and we will elaborate on this story further tomorrow, but since I promised this to you, New York has created a free tuition system for state schools, which is great, but there are downsides, and the downside includes the fact that students have to remain in the state for as long as they had gone to that school. So let's say they went to a school for 4 years. After they graduate, they'd have to stay in that state for another 4 years and kind of give back. If they don't do so, they'd have to pay the tuition that they saved during this program. There are lots of caveats to this, and I don't want you guys to think I forgot about the story. I will cover it in greater detail tomorrow. We're just running out of time today. With that said, thank you so much, guys, for being here, for doing the show with me. Are you going to stick around for the post game?
Yeah.
Great. Because we will be doing a post game, and it's going to be awesome. And if you're a member, you do want to stick around, and you do want to watch it. By the way, do we have any more time so I can just read some tweets real quick? All right.
1 minute.
Okay. I am refreshing. I want to read some TYT lives before we end. All right. Eliza Baxter says, watch United overbook now to make up for their losses. I've seen 5-year-olds write better apologies. And Marie Jacobson says, I nominate Oscar Munoz and United for Jerk of the Year 2017. Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of jerks so far. So hopefully we remember and we put them in as potential candidates. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you're a member, stick around. We will have a post-game show for you. For everyone else, become a member. Go to tytnetwork.com/join. We love you. We will see you tomorrow.